and this is Bulldoze, the official end of the season conversation about the Bulls with the Bigs. I'm your man Terrence Tomlin, co-founder. Got my brothers riding with me as usual: Eugene McIntosh, Joshua M. Hicks, and Drew Stevens, who have been holding down the fort all year on the Bulls beat. First and foremost, thank y'all so much for everything you brought to our coverage this year. You guys know how it was, man. This ups and downs. It was a roller coaster ride, and here we are getting off with no Bulls playoff appearance for this season for the 2023 year. I'm watching the Timberwolves and the Nuggets right now, and honestly, my basketball world has been very peaceful, not having to worry about the Sea Red crew. So I'm ready to kind of eulogize this season to see where these guys go from here because it's kind of ending how it started. It started with us asking where the Bulls go from here, and it's ending with us talking about where the Bulls go from here. Let's talk about it, guys. Man, the Bulls ended the season 40-42, good enough for third place in the Central Division. Was this kind of what you guys expected? Did they fall, kind of short of what you expected? What you guys think?
Man, I think they failed exactly where I expected. Uh, it sounds like a broken record, man. But when you talk about this team and the fool's gold of success that they had last year, when you talk about the signings of Zoe and DeMar and Caruso and whoever else they signed, I know I'm forgetting somebody, but you know how it goes, man. In the league, a lot of those teams that are experienced and have playoff experience and have championship aspirations, those guys, they just, it's not the same. It's not the old basketball that we grew up on. So these guys, they kind of coast along. Some of them, load management has become a thing. So those teams that are going to be around when it's playoff time, they kind of just coast through the season and they don't really pick it up until it's that time because they know as long as they're in one of those first 4 to 5 slot six maybe, and some of them just want to get that first round of home court advantage, they good to go. Whereas the Bulls, they had the new guys. A lot of teams didn't know what to expect from them, so there was no scouting report. So they phased a couple teams. And then when you talk about DeMar DeRozan's onslaught from last year, he had a damn good season offensively, but a lot of that was due to Zach LaVine's injury. So when you fast forward to this year and them having a year under their belt, as well as the other 29 teams in the league having a year under their belt, now there's a scouting report that goes around and it says, okay, now if we really want to beat these guys, you know, this is it's documented how to do it. So when you see Zach LaVine finally coming back, is probably as healthy as we've seen him in a while and trying to regain his form, I feel like him and DeMar DeRozan kind of clashed a little bit, even though the numbers, if you look at the numbers, you couldn't tell by the numbers. But when you look, like I always say, forget the analytics, the eye test. And when we looked at these guys play, sometimes they just didn't mesh well on the court. So I'm saying all of that to say that who honors 10th place? Who honors a play-in tournament? Those guys should have been at home after game number 82, but Adam Silver and his crew, they started this play-in tournament, which is cool. I like more basketball. I'm sure we all like more basketball, but you're rewarding losing, and then that gives the fan base, this fake hopes. Man, if we did beat Miami, hey, you was gonna get swept by the Milwaukee Bucks. So again, I'm saying that to say that maybe I didn't have them finishing 10th, but I'm not surprised they finished 10th, especially with no Lonzo Ball to lead the charge. And the future is bleak for those guys moving forward.
Yeah, I thought they'd be like seventh or eighth seed, which is still play-in territory. But more than anything else, man, I think this was one of the least likable Bulls teams I've seen in a while, man. Just based purely off of the fact that you didn't know what you were going to get from them, just from a effort and intensity level. night in and night out. And I think the blame for that goes to both Billy Donovan and the guys on the roster because it's a pretty veteran laden roster and guys who've been here before, and some of them have been in playoffs, namely DeMar DeRozan. And I feel like they should have been able to at least play to the standard that Billy Donovan spoke to the press about many times throughout the season. And it just never did it on a consistent enough basis. And when you don't do that, you're at home watching the playoffs instead of participating in them.
They regressed, man. They regressed. They just showed that at the end of the day, we're soft like Charmin. And Angel Soft as a really good front runner up when we got Patrick Beverly.
Some
right?
true. Yes.
So at the end of the day, man, it's just same old Bulls. And they just really, in a lot of ways, practice a lot of mediocrity and insanity, which is what they preached on not trying to do. Because the reality is, if they wanted to turn this season around, you had a whole trade deadline to make moves. You had a whole season to try to make moves. Yeah, you didn't have a lot of picks to use per se because you used it all on Nikola Vucevic. But guess what? You can trade some players to get some more picks to get other players. There's an aggressiveness to this game that the front office at first, applied, and rightfully so. They should have, because it was that bad. It was worse than this. So the fact that it was so bad previously when the new regime got here, yeah, they needed to turn the roster around. They did it in a very aggressive way. It was great, and it led to the playoffs. But that honeymoon phase is over, and they realized what they put together clearly as constructed right now is not working. Something has to give. Something has to change. So now they can't coast anymore. They have to go back to the drawing board and rework this roster in the best way that they can, knowing that even though they say they have support of the ownership to go over the luxury tax to do whatever they got to do, we know that's not going to happen. And then on top of that, they send mixed signals as far as saying we need to retool the roster and bring us a 3-point shooting, but you want to re-sign everybody. So there's no real direction without the actual. But while they gave a direction, there's really no real direction as far as what they're really trying to do. So they need to figure out which path or lane to take, and then figure out where to go from there. And until then, I'm gonna keep using my Angel Soft because that's just what they're using, man. It's bad. It's bad. So it's a lot of mediocrity and insanity that needs to be, that needs to change. And as far as the direction of where this team is moving forward,
I just had to check real quick to make sure I wasn't listening to a recording of the conversation we had at the beginning of the year where we were talking about the previous year. We just been saying this shit for so long. It's honestly just sounding like a broken record. I mean, if you look at it from a vibe standpoint, going into this season, expectations weren't high. The excitement was at an all-time low. And what are we left with at the beginning of the year? I'm honestly wondering if I should go back and just take back something I said at the beginning of this of the conversation. I said it was a roller coaster season. It really was just a steady drive or steady ride through mediocrity. You know what I mean? They really didn't have any ups. I'm trying to think of a signature win or a signature moment in this season. We never really got it. It was disappointment all year from expecting Lonzo Ball to come back, and that's more of a sad situation than anything. You know what I mean? Definitely.
Let me cut you off right there.
Go ahead.
What was the first thing Arturas Karnisovas said in that press conference at the end of the year? What was the very first thing he said?
That they liked how they ended the season.
So going back to what I stated a long time ago, the success that Mark Eversley had in Toronto, cool. The success that AK had in Denver, yeah, whatever, cool. This ain't that. This is the third largest market in sports, in American sports. This is outside of the Lakers and the Celtics. the franchise with the most NBA championships, if not Magic and Worthy and Kareem or Bird, McHale in that group, the most talked about dynasty in the history of sports. I want Bill Russell and those guys. Cool, I understand, but that was before my time. But exactly, we're talking about nothing that's ever been done before. Two three-peats. So I was already, what do I want to say? I don't, because again, me and Drew talked about this a lot. I have absolutely nothing positive to say about this 2022-23 bull season, man.
Let's just get it out the way, okay?
Yeah, and talking about AK and Mark, man, I was just totally on the fence with everybody was so happy to get Guard Packs out the jam, and I understand that. But I'll tell you one thing that Guard Packs did, and they always face the music. And that's something that I'm not honoring from Arturas Karnisovas right now. He gives us that same fluff, that same run-of-the-mill answers when, he says the same thing 22 times. He answered the same question the same way. And it really bugged me. And we have to start there, like Drew and like Josh said, man. We can blame Billy and we can blame all the players all we want. But they put that team together. Jerry Reinsdorf gave Michael Reinsdorf the keys to the team. So we have to start from the top. And this, again, when you look at that baseball team on the South Side and you look at that team that holds down the United Center for half the season, there's a common denominator there, man. And, that I think that's where we need to start.
I feel like if you're not willing to say what this season really was, which honestly was a failure from beginning to end, then you're going to find yourself in the same situation. You're probably going to believe what Arturas Karnisovas said in that final, press conference about how they liked how the season ended. The season ended with you guys not having a playoff berth, losing a play-in game to the Miami Heat, a guy that you traded. You traded Jimmy Butler away for Zach LaVine and everything, and then you max Zach LaVine out. Go back and look at that box score about what he did in that final quarter. And the next thing we heard from those guys is that they liked how the season ended. It's a bunch of BS. You know what I mean? And honestly, as a Bulls fan, I don't remember the last time I was this just sick and tired of what was going on with the Bulls. It's like, what's next for the Bulls? It better be to tear everything down. It better be not to run this squad back ever again, because it was absolute complete mediocrity. And I know that when you break it down and look at some of the details, some players did improve, and we'll talk about that. But from a big picture standpoint, this better be the end of whatever phase this was, because if Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley thinks that they can just put together a Frankenstein on the run or something in this city, they don't know how hot their seat is about to get. Okay? Because next season, like you guys said, ain't no training wheels. The bumpers is off. No, the gloves are going to be off. If the Bulls go into next season with them, and they're preaching all of this, we want to win, we want to make the playoffs, and then they have the same kind of season they did last year, good luck. Because fans are going to be wanting heads to roll, and it's not just going to be Zach LaVine or DeMar DeRozan or Vooch. It's going to be AK and Mark Eversley, the guys who they thought were coming in to change the culture from what Garpax had it as, and it's really just looking like a continuation of it. And I'm like you said, and in some cases a step back. Tell me it didn't feel like a slap in the face to hear that they liked how this season ended. It's like, come on, Bulls fans deserve more than that. Bulls fans are smarter than that. And honestly, this roster is going to have to go under some major construction, man. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Who's safe and who's bait? When you guys look at this roster as is, who are some of the guys that you feel like can be foundational pieces moving forward? Who has to go? Who has to pick their bags right now and leave that madhouse on Madison for hopefully greener pastures. So, Josh, what you thinking, bro?
Man, look, I don't know who's safe or who's bait, because the reality is the beginning of the press conference that made it seem like everybody was bait. And then about the end of the press conference, they pretty much said, "Oh, everybody's safe. We getting everybody coming back. It's a reunion." I don't know what to think, bro. Like, it's hard to, but that's what you experienced is the definition of insanity. You just pretty much acknowledged you don't have a plan, and you're expecting different results to come from this unknowing, out of the blue idea that could potentially come from the cloud, from the clouds. Like, bro, you have to literally strategically plan for this next season in such a way that you should have enough sample size now that this roster from last year all the way to this year did not equate to the type of success that you wanted. As a matter of fact, you started the season by saying you wanted to be better than the first round of the playoffs. And if you did it, you said the season was going to be a fail. Well, you failed badly because you didn't even go back to the playoffs. You at the crib in Cancun watching these other players do their thing, and half of these dudes don't even have no girls to be messing around over there. They just chilling. So I'm trying to figure out where in the world, like, how can you say everybody's safe? I just don't get it. So I can't even answer your question effectively right now, bro. I'm just literally trying to figure out I'm just looking back and watching what they're going to do. Because you started off by saying some people got to go, and then by the end of the press conference, you said some people got to stay. Well, all the people that arguably have to go, you pretty much said in the press conference they're going to stay. So make up your mind, bro. Make up your mind. It's like a girl trying to figure out what she's going to eat. You don't know the answer to that because she's going to take 50 minutes to figure out that answer.
So I'll say this, like, it was frustrating listening to his presser. It was weird for him to have Billy Donovan sitting next to him, and Billy Donovan's been taking all these questions all year long for him and for Eversley. One thing he did say, though, and that he's made clear, is that they're not going to rebuild. He also talked about how this team needs to change its shooting profile. So as soon as he said that, even though later on in the press conference he started talking about the group and what he needed to do to improve the group, as soon as he said changing the shooting profile, that made me think that maybe there's a world where they look into shopping DeMar DeRozan and seeing what they can get from him. It's a catch-22, though. It's a catch-22. Like me and Gino talked about, DeMar DeRozan is probably their second highest IQ player, best ball handler. Even though there was a lot of debate about who should be taking the last second shots, he's the guy who I personally feel most comfortable with getting those shots, even though I would have liked to have seen Zach get more chances at that, more bites at the apple. So if you let him go, you're not going to get anybody that's better than him, but maybe you can get, a three-point shooter, maybe one other guy who can help protect the rim, and maybe a draft pick, maybe, I don't know. But then you put the onus back on Zach a little bit where he has to be the man, and we know that he's not the most poised down the stretch, has issues with turnovers, has issues with shot selection. He needs somebody, or this team needs somebody who can handle the ball effectively, competently, who can make good decisions, but they're just stuck between a rock and a hard place for real, because they can't even bring back the same group, because doing that will put them in the tax. So that's off the table. Everybody ain't coming back. We already know that. Why would you go into the tax for a team that just missed the playoffs? That being said, they're just really in a tough spot, man, because if Vooch walks, they still would only have, I don't know, man, something between like $9 million and $11 million to fill that gap. It's not like they're going to get his whole salary slot. So I don't really know, man. I think by not being open to the idea of blowing this all up, they really kind of pigeonhole themselves even more. I'm of the mind that I would like to see them try to trade DeMar and see what you can get from him. You let Zach have the reins again, even though I'm not expecting that to lead to them contending or even maybe getting into the playoffs. But they do have their number one or their first round pick for next season. So for next summer. So if this next season goes awry, at least you got that to fall back on if all hell breaks loose and they wind up in the lottery. You give Patrick Williams more tries, more bites of the apple. I know we kind of this the same old song and dance with him, but
That's a name we haven't said yet, Patrick Williams.
that's true. I don't. I think that my biggest thing with Patrick Williams, I think that you either a dog or you not. That's not something that you learn. So I think he just kind of is what he is. Maybe as he matures and grows, those inconsistencies are fewer and far between. But he's not going to be a 20-point, 8 rebound, 4 assists, 1 block, 1 steal guy like that. I don't think that's his mo. But I think he can be an effective player for the right team.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not that's this Bulls team, I think they owe it, I guess, to him and maybe themselves just to see what else they can pull out of him if that big three is broken up.
Yeah, I feel you, man. When we talk about Patrick Williams, it's like DeMar DeRozan has to go, because if this is the guy that you drafted with your number 4 pick, then like you said, Drew, you don't want to give up on him early, because as you stated a few times this season, this was really his first full year of professional basketball without injury. So, I mean, I wasn't really disappointed with his season. I feel like, him not knowing exactly where he fit in with the group. If he starts and he's playing with Zach and DeMar and Vooch, he kind of looked like he didn't want to step on any toes offensively out there. But then when he comes in off the bench, he's much more effective when he's playing with the second unit. So I feel like giving him more reps with the first unit, him being a little more experienced, knowing what an 82-game full season is like physically, mentally, all of that, I think it would bode well for a guy. Now, Drew, I do agree with you as far as either you're a dog or you're not. That's not something that you learn, but I feel like you can develop some dog tendencies if you got some other dogs with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm not Kawhi Leonard, and I hate, this is just who they've always compared the claw to the paw. They have, a similar build.
That was always such a bad comp. Yeah.
It
Such
was,
a
but if we're gonna use that, then that's fine. But when you look at Kawhi Leonard and how he grew as a player, he played with 3 Hall of Famers. And the San Antonio Spurs are a well-known franchise for player development.
Mm-hmm.
The Bulls, on the other hand, they're not. So when you look at the development of Patrick Williams, a lot of that goes into the Bulls. I'm not going to put it all on them, but I feel like if he gets more time, he did what he did, 10 points, 5 rebounds, and whatever, in like 26 minutes or something like that. So if you give him 12, 13 more minutes a game, I'm pretty sure his field goal percentage will go up, his points, but his output would rise. So when we talk about who's safe and who's bait, I feel like DeMar DeRozan, much love to him. He's a cool guy, gave us, he was always willing to give us his time. And, he did well here, but I think his time here is up. I do think Zach LaVine is safe. They maxed him out. We talk about Zach a lot. We know how gifted he is, how talented he is.
Wait. I'm going to go down the line because I want you guys to – I'm going to go down the roster and we'll give quick points about it. I see you going into Zach and everything, but let me just touch on Pat Will real quick because I think you guys made great points on him. Mm-hmm. It's actually stuff I thought about when I was watching Mikal Bridges on the Nets toward the end of the season, even watching Russell Westbrook last night with Kawhi out and the way he kind of looked like the Westbrook of old because he was in position to play his game. It made me wonder, have the Bulls put Patrick Williams in position for the dog to come out of him? Are they making it so they dogs can eat? You feel me?
No.
That's a reasonable question. And when I look at Pat Williams, my final verdict on his season is that I'm not ready to make a decision on him. I would like to see more of him in a Bulls uniform, but in a much different role, in a role that features him where he doesn't have to be the first, almost the fourth option on this team. I don't think that was fair to his development. But at the same time, to the question that was asked on who's safe, and who was bait. It's like, what is the goal? Like, what is the goal of this team? Are they trying to be a team that makes the playoffs? Or are they trying to win a championship? If the goal is to make a championship, I got the roster pulled up right now, and it's like we have a team full of role players, and then on top of that, I don't even know if these are championship caliber role players. So if
Alex Caruso, I think I know.
Yeah,
I know Gino probably gonna roll his eyes, but I think Alex Caruso is a championship caliber role player, and I think
yeah,
I think that's proven, even though it happened in the bubble, and people want to say what they're gonna say about what went on down there. But he was a part of a championship crew, and around
mm-hmm.
a certain amount of talent, he can play their role for a specific team. You know what I'm saying? Like,
he knows that his what he's good at translates during playoff time.
Yeah.
Like if the Bulls were worth anything, Alex Caruso would have been a good player to have for sure. Okay, let's do this real quick, and you guys can elaborate on some of these players as you see fit. I want to start with a guy that was the subject of some of the best conversations I've had during the Bulls season this year. A guy who a lot of the fan base and people who cover the team said they improved. We had some spirited debates internally on if that was cap or not. But I'm talking about our boy Coby White. Now we hear rumblings that he would like to be the starting point guard. He kind of settled into a 6-man role this year. Looked a lot more comfortable scoring the basketball. Looked a lot more comfortable handling the basketball, which were things in areas that he needed to address coming into this season. I want to know what you guys think about Coby White. Is he safe or is he bait? Do you see him as the next starting point guard of the Chicago Bulls? Gino.
No.
Bro.
No.
No.
Wait. Let's be clear. What you saying no to? Starting point guard or is he safe for bait?
I don't think he's ever going to be the Bulls' next starting point guard. And if he is, then that says a lot about where the Bulls are headed. And that's no shot at Coby White. Seriously, I do. Me and Drew had this talk all year, and I will go on record and say Coby White, despite the stats, because again, like I said, sometimes the famous people, Jay-Z line people love to quote that I'm not going off of. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Numbers definitely lie, and they've lied more than once. And when you look at Coby White's stats, if you look year by year, statistically, this was his worst year. But if you look at his play on the court, even in less minutes, he was a much improved player. Even with how Stacey King and Adam talked about how much his ball handling improved. It did. It did. I'm not gonna cap. It did, and I was surprised, and I was happy to see Coby White finally kind of come into his own and realize, man, let me stop thinking so much. Let me play. I know what my role is. He got the coming off the bench. You come in to put up points, but at some point, this was a team that was lacking at the point guard position. So, we talked about this as well. Point guard, NBA point guards, is not a position you learn when you get to the league. That's something that a point guard you learn over your years. But when you look at how they played in North Carolina, he wasn't really a point guard. He was just the smallest guy on the court. They played a fast pace up and down. So he scored the basketball, which is why he's the number one high school scorer of all time in North Carolina. So I personally think Coby White would be a much better, much more effective, efficient player playing on a team in the Western Conference.
Any rebuttals on the panel? What's going on?
Oh, nah, that's a very bold take. I like that though, Gino. That's what he does. I think Coby White still has a ways to go when it comes to starting point guard position, because it's not just being able to create for yourself. You got to create for other people. And sometimes when you talk about the IQ component of things, has not been come to full fruition in certain aspects, especially when you talk about post play, getting how to get the big men involved and things of that sort. That's always been a struggle throughout this past season for him. Yes, he improved in a lot of ways, in a lot of areas. But you kind of also, if you're the Bulls and you're Billy Donovan, you got to think about what type of point guard you're talking about.
Exactly.
You got to figure out what type of play and style of play do you want your point guard to have? Because the only real athletic, crazy point guard he's actually ever coached in the league was Russell Westbrook. Every other point guard he's had has been more of a traditional role point guard. You run an offense, you handle the ball. You don't have to score as much, but if you have the gift to score, that's a plus, and you're more of a shooter. That's not Coby White's game. Coby White's game is more of a Kyrie Irving-esque. I can put the ball in the basket. I can get my own shot whenever, and it just helps that he can also shoot the ball effectively off the catch and shoot. But he's more of a creator for himself as well, while learning to create for others. So that type of point guard play hasn't necessarily been ideal per se, unless you're like a Russell Westbrook at the time where he was the MVP of the league. That it doesn't always fit his system. And if you really think about it too, that's part of why when Coby White first got the position, he didn't last too long. It wasn't just the fact that his skill set didn't catch up for that position, but it's also the offensive style that they was running. I just feel like Coby White is better off as of right now, as he continues to develop that point guard role and what it means, not just from his position, his skill set, but also from the position as a whole. He has a little bit of ways to go with that, and having a veteran point guard that is more of a traditional point guard. I think bringing that in will ideally help his growth that much more. Because even Coby White said himself, even though I want to be a starting point guard, I'm not necessarily a point guard. I'm just a guard, which means like you can do everything, but everything hasn't been put in place or revealed enough to us, at least to me, to be like, yeah, you got a chance of being the starting point guard. Everybody got a chance, but that now your chances are kind of slim to none. If you really want to talk about compared to what someone like a Patrick Beverley brought this year, which was ideal for a Billy Donovan system.
Yeah, I think Coby White, I think he's safe, but I don't think he's starting point guard material for this team, especially if they're not going to rebuild and they plan on bringing back the big three. They need, like Gino and Josh said, they need a heady, organizing, low turnover type point guard that can take the ball out of Zach and DeMar's hands at times where they're not so easily guarded. Like they can't be trapped that easy, especially Zach LaVine. Like if you can get this guy coming off more catch and shoot sets, or something of that nature, I think that would do him well. Not that anybody asked, but I've always, ever since Chris Paul went to Phoenix, I've always wondered what a Chris Paul-like guard, and I know there's, come on, how many Chris Pauls are there or have they been in the league? But somebody like Chris Paul, what that person could have done for Zach, in relationship to how we've seen Devin Booker blossom even more since he's had the point guard playing in that backcourt with him.
Drew, what were some of the areas that Coby White that you feel that he improved in? Because I don't want to short the man, and I was over here kind of laughing to myself because it's hard for me to kind of talk about the Bulls without sounding like an asshole. And I feel like Coby White improved, but it was more of a kind of going from a below average player to an average player kind of thing. And
yeah.
And I feel like the best thing he did this season was improve his bait status. Improve his stock around the league, and because the Bulls are still searching for a starting caliber player at the point guard position. They're still paying Lonzo. So I know that they can't and won't ever be like, yeah, we moving on, but they got to move on. And if that's the case, it's hard for them to move on without having some players that other teams want. Or, you know what I mean? And I think Coby White looks like a player, like Jane mentioned, that could flourish in another system. But right now, I don't think that Coby White takes your team to another level if he starts.
No way.
Wow.
Which, if I'm Arturas Karnisovas, that's how I'm looking at Coby. And he's firmly in my bait category. So I know I asked you something, Drew, and then kind of went on a rant.
No. You asked me how did he improve. I think it looked like the game slowed down for him
Mm-hmm.
on both sides of the ball. Being able to attack closeouts more effectively, but also the way in which he was getting to the rim and his decision making when he got there. Like sometimes he would be able to finish at the rim, or sometimes he'd be able to dump it off to Drummond or another big, whoever was in the game with him. Um, we talked about his ball handling, being able to create separation, get that shot off. Although he didn't shoot as well, we talked about this already, as he did last season. He still, with the way this roster is built, the second best 3-point shooter. Like just in terms of guys who put it up. Like statistically, Patrick Williams is the best because he shoots 40% clip, but he doesn't shoot enough of them though. Part of that is because of that slow release. But and then defensively, he just seemed to be in the right spot more times than I remember him being. Like it was one game or more than one game, really, but I think he was like calling out guys in terms of where they need to be. Zach LaVine specifically, like, hey man, you're supposed to be over here doing this X, Y, Z. So I think just his mind is starting to catch up to, I guess, where his body is, if that makes sense. But I'm with y'all though. That doesn't make him a starting point guard. Like I think if he's your starting point guard, then your roster is going the wrong way. Like somebody has to push him down to where he's in that Ben Gordon role, that 6-man Vinny Johnson microwave coming off the bench, giving people buckets type of role.
Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and move on, man. I want to stay in the backcourt though. Second-year player, Chicago bred. You guys know I'm talking about Ayo Dosunmu. What do we make of his second year? I know it as a rookie he got thrust into a very tough position as a rookie, but he thrived and showed a lot of promise. Not sure if we feel the same about Ayo after his second year, but he's a guy that's facing. I think he has an option, or do the Bulls have an option on his contract this year or this summer? So you let me know if I'm tweaking, Drew, but I think the Bulls got to make a decision on him.
Yeah, I think he's restricted. I think restricted free agent. I believe him and Coby are restricted. But I think he was, again, roster issues. He was miscast as a starting point guard playing alongside Zach and Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan. Like, Dosunmu, if he doesn't do anything else, he gets to the rim. I like the way that he pushes the ball in transition and can get downhill. But how many times is the ball really going to be in his hands when he's playing with those three guys? He's not the catch and shoot guy. So putting him around those three scores just isn't complimentary. It doesn't do him any justice. It doesn't do the roster any justice, or that whatever group he's playing with, can be better served with a guy like Patrick Beverley, even though he's not a catch and shoot guy either. But that IQ kind of makes up for the lack of experience and the lack of shooting that Dosunmu brought to the table. I think if we just keeping it a buck here, I think he might be in the running, if not the winner, for my most disappointing Bull this season.
Okay. Josh, how you feel about that?
I mean, I think he just had a taste of what the NBA really is like. Just because last year, like you said, he was coming off the bench. He wasn't expected to start, but roster issues and injuries played such a role that he just had to be thrust in there, and he did the best that he could with what was given to him, and he did pretty well. But when it came to this year, he just it's a roller coaster year for him. He just had a lot of ups and downs, and there were times where those inconsistency stretches were longer than we would have liked for Ayo, which is why they made the moves that they made to bring in a Patrick Beverley. I know we didn't run the story on it or anything, but I did get to talk to Ayo about some of that stuff, and he just said he knows exactly what he needs to improve on. He wasn't worried about being called in the season potentially a sophomore slump. He was just looking at it as in, it's a year I got to get better. I know what I got to do. I'm learning from great people. Spoke highly of how Patrick Beverly came in and really encouraged him and changed the his viewpoints on things. And he just knows that he knows what he has to do. That's his biggest thing right now. He wants to get better. He's a team guy, but he knows what he has to do. So I think the veteran leadership has poised him to enough to where this season, he's learned some things that he didn't get a chance to learn last year. But considering the situation of the point guard play and how desperately the Bulls need to get that position right, with Lonzo being out and no expectation of him coming back, and cap space being so limited, I mean, I don't think he comes back next year. I really don't. Because I think it's just going to be the odd man out, especially if the Bulls are investing so much into Coby White, which, as the way that press conference looked like, it appears that was going to happen. I don't know what these other teams are going to offer Ayo, considering that this is the second year, of his deal, second year in the league, and he had the year that he had from an up and down perspective, a roller coaster perspective. I don't know what teams were willing to offer him, but at the end of the day, if you had to choose between Ayo and Coby right now, you can tell it's going to be Coby. And there's no guarantee, especially when you got Dalen Terry on your bench, there's no guarantee that there's going to be a space for Ayo now, even though in a lot of ways for a second round pick, he's probably lived up to higher expectations. He lived up to what that second round pick, he's proven that he's worth more than that. But at the same time, it's a tough situation for him, and I just don't see the Bulls bringing him back, knowing that they need a more veteran point guard to fill that role, and you already got Coby White trying to make him a backup, and you still got Dalen Terry on your bench who's itching to get some minutes and has made it known, I'm not waiting. I'm playing next year. Don't get it twisted. So it's tough for Ayo, but I don't think he's coming back.
Gino, what you got for Ayo, man?
I think Ayo is in a funny situation. I think Ayo is one of those guys who needs a specific team to flourish, because when you look at his makeup, and this is the reason why I think he stayed until his junior year. When you look at his makeup and you look at the point guard position, point guards don't play the way Ayo plays. When you look at the two guard position, Ayo's not athletic enough to flourish at the two guard position. He doesn't shoot the ball at a high enough, good enough clip, especially from deep, to excel as a two guard. And I think, again, going back to what I stated from the beginning, player development. What's going on behind the scenes? Who's back there working with Ayo? Like we said, he was thrown in the fire last year because it's just what it was. And then coming back this year with no Zoe and just the lack of depth, and like Josh was saying, rookie Dalen Terry, who should have been getting minutes a long time ago when we knew that this team was going to be average to below average. Dalen Terry, he deserved minutes as well. So I just think with Ayo, I will call it a sophomore slump. And like Josh said, I think Josh put it as best as anyone when he said, I feel like this is just a year that he really got to know what the NBA was all about. So I don't know where he fits with the Bulls next year, but like I said, I do feel like, and I love to throw San Antonio around because they're that team that takes those guys who probably wouldn't flourish on other teams, and they find a way to develop those guys and fit them into the system. You got to think about that as well. A lot of these teams, they just free flowing. They don't have a system. There are few, you could probably count on your fingers on one hand the number of teams who actually have a system around the league. And the Spurs are at the top, even though they were on the outside looking in as well. But when you look at their history, as long as Pop has been there, this is a team who, even the Miami Heat, like these are teams that have that system and they can plug and play guys. So I feel like Io is another guy that will probably be better off somewhere else where, he can be closely monitored and just developed a little bit more. So, Io is one of our guys. We've been following him since his freshman year, his sophomore year, actually at Morgan Park. So I definitely want to see him succeed, but that could be outside of Chicago.
I don't mean to laugh, but it's funny. You like just send him to Pop in San Antonio, put him under some parental supervision and see how he does. But
Guys need it, T.
real quick on Pop, he had my favorite quote of the year, and it came on the very last day of the regular season. They asked him pregame, Pop, what's your favorite thing about the season? And he said that it's all over in 48 minutes. So shout out to everybody that's getting developed over there. Pop was ready for it to end. But speaking of it, speaking of it being over, and have we seen the last days of DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine?
Over.
What is the
Done.
take? It's over for the duo of Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan.
Smoke cooked, roasted chicken, barbecue chicken, whatever piece of meat.
What went wrong, bro? Like, why didn't it work out between those two guys who before, I guess we saw them, did we think they had complementary games? Did we think that they'd be able to play off each other well? And Drew, I think you mentioned it. What it became was a big source of questioning on the identity of this team. Who takes the last shot? Who's Batman? Who's Robin? Those are all questions that I always think are like petty questions, unless you really have them. You know what I mean? And I think the issue with Zach, even back to last year, he was an all-star last year and everything. He defers so much to DeMar DeRozan that I never blamed DeMar DeRozan for feeling like, if you're going to give me the ball, then get out the way, because that's how you're playing, Zach. I don't know if Zach ever said that, but that's kind of the impression I got early on, as that duo started to kind of settle in. But as we, close this season out, they don't have much to show for it. I mean, all-star appearances, but that's it. No, no playoff series wins, nothing like that. So if it is the end, like what, do they trade DeMar? Is Zach? Do they dangle Zach to see what they could get? Like, how do they handle this situation where their two best players are probably going to be splitting up?
I said it earlier, man. I think if I was in charge, man, and I'm glad I'm not, because Lord have mercy, man. That's some crazy shit they got to deal with. But I think that I'll be trying to see what I can get for DeMar. Like, really and truly, like, I would be looking to see what I can get for both of them. Like, what do they market like? But again, if they're not going to rebuild, I think you go with the guy who's younger, the guy whose game fits more this modern way that all the teams in the league are playing, who can get up and down the court, is not going to live in the mid-range so much that it dominates the team's shot profile. And that guy is Zach LaVine, like we talked about before. It's the catch-22 proposition there, man. But you just try to see what you can get back from DeMar, and you fix some of the problems that were created when this roster was built. Like, a lot of the issues I think that DeMar and Zach have are owed just as much to the fact that this roster, the way it was built around them, the lack of shooting that exists on this roster, man, that was never fixed from the first summer in which Acme had a chance to do so. It goes back to that. And also the fact that the two of them are only healthy for a portion of last season. And even then, Zach was battling a thumb injury on his non-shooting hand, I want to say. Then he hurts his knee, comes into this season, still battling that same knee issue coming off the surgery. He starts to get right, then DeMar gets hurt late in the season with the quad and the hip. So it's just, guys going to get hurt. You can always kind of plan for that, I guess, to a certain extent. Like, it's a grind. It's an 82-game season. But, I think the solution, if you're not going to rebuild, is trying to see what you can get for DeMar and make it make sense around the guys that you're still keeping around.
Yeah, man. I agree with you, Drew. Honestly, a part of me feels like we never really got to see the ceiling of what that duo can look like together, considering neither of them were really healthy outside of the first year when they first got there, when they were winning. We never really got to see them develop in a way that I feel like they could have. Part of it, yeah, is injuries, but I think also part of that is coaching as well. That's Billy Donovan. When you get the talent that you have, you got to make sure you put the talent in the best position to score and to effectively, um, you know, perform. I think the issue for me was Billy Donovan did that too much with DeMar and not enough for Zach. I think because of the fact that Zach's game is so modern and he can pretty much, whenever he gets the ball, get his own shot from wherever and shoot from wherever. I think Billy Donovan just used that as, additional icing on the cake per se, and it was like, hey, since I have this option, we're gonna make sure DeMar goes. We're gonna make sure we gotta get DeMar straight because he's not gonna shoot a lot of threes. He's gonna need the ball in his hands a lot to do what he needs to do. Um, so I think Billy was, in his own way, kind of forced to cater to DeMar because of the fact, like you mentioned, Drew, his skill set didn't fit um, the modernized game in a way, especially when it came to this offense. I think it really shifted his offense a lot, but that's a Billy Donovan thing. Billy Donovan has to figure out a way to make all that work, including getting Vooch involved, which that was an issue all season long. So because of that, yeah, you got to dangle DeMar. You got to see what you can get for him. Obviously, since you signed Zach long term, you know you just got to see what's out there and available, what you can get. And for me, to be quite honest with you, I think you really got to see what you're gonna do about with Vooch, because if you figure out what you're gonna do with Vooch, it can make things easier for you to trade DeMar. But if you ain't got a big man and you're trying to trade DeMar, what else are you gonna give Zach from a maybe talent perspective that can match what he brings to the table? Um, that's that's hard to remain and remain to be seen right now. And I don't think the Bulls really have a plan to go about how to handle that, because then you'll be going from two a big three to literally just uno, and we already know what Zach LaVine uno was like, because that's what happened before Vooch got here. So I think they got to figure that out first before they even start talking about getting rid of the duo. But if you were to get rid of the duo, yeah, DeMar has to be dangled the most and figure out what you can get out of him and take what you can get, because there's a lot of contenders out there that do have some draft capital or some quality role players that they may be willing to get rid of because they know DeMar DeRozan is so lethal and top tier of a veteran player, even in his 30s right now, and over 13 years in the league.
Gino, you say they're cooked, and you know what? I don't even. Gene's gonna be pissed at me for even bringing this up, but is this the season that Damian Lillard ends up on the Bulls? But no, but
I mean,
just when you talk about I know I've mentioned, and Gene, we've been having this debate for 2 years now. Zach would look good in the Portland Trail Blazers jersey. It's home for him. The Portland Trail Blazers would get to kind of reset their clocks with Zach LaVine, and then the Bulls in turn get the point guard they've needed for so long. They get the star player and bona fide number one option that they've needed for so long. But I feel like that's kind of jumping the gun. I'm over here thinking about what steps can they take to get into a championship realm.
It's gonna be hard, brother. And just to close out the Dame situation, what does that do for his career?
he ain't winning here.
Hey, he can be loyal to the Bulls. They go pay.
He can't.
They go pay that bread.
Ain't no more loyalty, man. Loyalty is over once it's over with for Portland, man. But my way to fix this thing, and I'll just say that I like what Josh said about Billy, because let's not leave Billy off the hook. He definitely has some part in this as well. But I think the biggest thing that we're not talking about, and this is something that I was always debating about with the Facebook groups, is the point guard play. And the reason, if Zoe missing meant that much to this team, then that was an issue in itself, because he was really the third or fourth option, even though he played the most important position on the court. But I
Yeah,
feel like the reason why DeMar and Zach didn't flourish is because we had absolutely huff point guard play. I feel like Zoe was the perfect guy. Like Josh
Mm-hmm.
said, no, he's not
Right.
Kyrie. No, he's not Dame and Steph or Shea or those guys who put up 30 a game. But he is that guy who can shoot the ball at a high clip. He shoots the three ball well. He gets the ball off the rim,
his vision.
pushes it up the court with one pass, doesn't look to dribble over dribble. So I
Mhm.
think he was the common denominator between Zach and DeMar. Once those guys had to start fending for themselves and dribbling the ball up the court and trying to find their own shots, that's where this thing kind of slowly but surely. So I
Definitely.
do agree with Josh about Billy, but I think the biggest issue was not having a point guard to get those guys the ball where they needed it most and where they could excel best. But T, we talked about it, man. My easy fix for this is going out and getting Fred VanVleet. That's the easiest fix. That's the easiest fix. A guy who's low turnover, who's proven a proven winner. He can get you 18, 19, 20 a game. He knows how to run an offense, and
Tough.
he's like your second. He's like a
Yeah.
coach on the floor. And then Josh, when you talk about Vooch, Vooch ain't coming back. Vooch is going for the biggest payday. And then, the championship contention, that's secondary. The bag is A1 for everybody. Let's not get it twisted. So I don't see Vooch coming back, but I know a quick fix for that as well. And maybe, Vooch was double, 17 and 10, 17 and 11, whatever he was this year. But there's a guy over there in Minnesota not named Carl Anthony Towns and not named Rudy Gobert. His name is Nas Reed. And if you've been watching Nas Reed this
Yeah.
year, he can get it done on both ends of the court. So there are ways to fix this. There's no quick fix for a championship in the next year or two. But I feel like if you want to show Bulls fans that, okay, maybe we messed this thing up, but we are on a path to kind of patch things up and see how quickly we can put this thing back together to make a championship run. And those are just two guys off the top of my head, but that's a way that you can show your fan base that you're not trying to, you know, the Wimbiana sweepstakes are damn near over with. But since you're talking about not rebuilding,
My heart
then
just
this
broke a
is the
little
way to
bit.
kind of
Yeah,
stay the
yeah.
course, and then because the game is going to continue to change, you know, at a rapid pace. So Fred VanVleet, Nas Reed, see what you can get for DeMar DeRozan. Vooch ain't coming back, and take it from there. But that's why we on this side, and we're not in the seats of AK and Mark Evans.
Gino, let me ask all y'all something because I've heard this floated a little bit within the realm of like people who are all for seeing what the Bulls can get for DeMar DeRozan. Do you think the Grizzlies will be interested in DeRozan, and would they give up a Tyus Jones, maybe a Zaire Williams, and/or a draft pick for DeRozan? How would y'all feel about that?
I think that works, because I
They
feel
need
like the
him. Yeah.
Memphis Grizzlies, they're caught in the middle with the way that
Mm-hmm.
they play, because Jai's gonna have to calm down, because he can't keep playing at this pace. He's gonna have to slow down. He can still be athletic as ever, but he's gonna have to learn how to play below the rim until he's needed to take that extra momentum. But when you got guys like Desmond Bain and Dylan Brooks and Jaren Jackson Jr. and those guys who you feel like are gonna be around for a few years, I feel like DeMar DeRozan is the complement to that offense, because I mean they shoot the ball. They shoot the ball well. Desmond Bain shoots the ball well. Ja, he can make it. Dylan Brooks used to be able to make it, but I feel like Jaren Jackson can shoot it. So I feel like DeMar DeRozan, that's a really good point, Drew. I feel like Zaire Williams, he has a pretty good upside. I see that kid being very solid in the near future. He just has to get somewhere where he can play. But again, the broken record, and I'm going to pass it to y'all. Player development, man.
I like the idea, for sure, especially since the Grizzlies have a ton of picks that they need to get rid of.
Yeah.
But they're clearly not in a rebuild stage. So I'm pretty sure they'll be more open to, giving us some draft capital along with the DeMar trade. I think for me though, on top of it, we talk about point guard. I don't know why this comes to my mind, but I feel like it could be a pretty decent option. We should kind of look over and see what Orlando going to do with Jalen Suggs, man. Because with the development of Markelle Fultz over there and what he's done, I don't know if there's gonna be much room for Jalen to really run the show over there. And if they're willing to dangle him, yeah, when I think about Jalen, I'm thinking about a young guy, still probably on a rookie deal. He's tough. He's still learning to play a point guard position, but at least he's tough. He can shoot it, especially from three, and he just brings a toughness and an energy that the Bulls completely lacked at that position. And he's young, so he can fit in with this young squad. I think it's something to look into. I'm not saying it's a definite. I'm not saying he's going to be the cure or anything like that. But what I am saying is Arturas Karnisovas consistently talked about, thinking outside the box. You literally made Orlando think outside the box well enough for them to give you Vooch. You may want to revisit and see if they can give you somebody else because they have pieces there that could be kind of useful. And I don't know why this Jalen Suggs idea to me just stands out, and I just feel like he would actually be kind of a good plug-in. Not saying he's the ultimate solution. But considering you still paying Lonzo Ball $20 million a year and you can't get that off the books, you're going to need some type of cheaper point guard, at least maybe that's on a rookie deal that's still young but has that experience and can show that can run that position. Jalen Suggs is that type of dude.
I don't disagree with any of you guys. I just feel like none of those hit in the way that they're supposed to hit. And I know that we just sat here and we said their options are small. Man, it's going to be tough for the Bulls to get into that next level of competitiveness without kind of stripping it down. And I know that they haven't said it's a rebuild, but if you trade DeMar for some of the guys like we just talked about, it's going to feel like a rebuild. You know what I mean? Unless we're completely talking about the issue being the makeup of the team and we're bringing in players that fit the system better. But guys, I'm super worried about the direction of this team. I don't know if you guys can tell. I don't feel like there's too many options for them to improve. It's almost exactly how I felt at the end of last season when I felt like they should have been entertaining trading some of these players. Trading some of the guys that are still on this roster. So I guess I should say if I haven't mentioned any other the Bulls players' names, we were saying that they were safe for bait. If I haven't mentioned anybody else, it's like the Magic Johnson meme. Like, hey, they're not going to be here next year. Okay.
Only meathead Bulls fans are optimistic about this team's future.
It's very bleak.
What you just said, T, is the reason why there's a section of people who just want to see it just blown up completely because it's not a championship contending roster. It just isn't.
And that should be the goal,
It should be the goal. And part of my thought process in not even building around Zach, just keeping him here for right now is just holding out hope that a disgruntled star can find his way to Chicago.
Thank you, Drew. Honestly,
that's part of it.
For so long. That's why I can't let go of the Damian Lillard dream, and I'm looking at guys like Karl Anthony Towns in Minnesota.
Oh God,
I'm not a big Cat fan.
Oh God, no, I can't. I'm sorry, not Cat.
I feel you, but that those are the waters that we're fishing in.
Hey, Ant-Man, cool with me. Give me Ant-Man.
Somebody said Zach LaVine and Karl Anthony Towns the same player, so I don't know, man.
Damn.
I mean, they were
They end up
teammates.
flat boxing when they get over there. But look, that is the question of this offseason. We don't know what's going to happen with that draft pick. It's theirs if it's in the top 4. If not, it's going to Orlando. They got a 1.8 chance of getting that number 1 pick. I know that number rings a bell to Bulls fans because that is the exact same percentage that the Bulls had of getting Derrick Rose. They say lightning doesn't strike twice. But
it
the
ain't
Bulls,
gonna start with the Bulls either.
It only does in Orlando.
yeah.
Right.
Hey,
Right.
the Cavaliers got LeBron, lost LeBron, and got Kyrie. Okay, when Bulls need a stroke of luck like nobody's business. Like, what team in the NBA in this, like, the market that the Bulls are in, what team needs the number 1 pick more than them?
Hey man, the curse of Big Mike, Joe.
Who's he going to play for? Like, who was the worst team in the league this year?
Was it
I
Houston?
don't know.
It was
Bulls.
Houston.
Okay.
I think it was Houston.
Whew. Just feeling like we packed our bags and we're settling into a basketball hell once again, a very familiar place.
Now, I will say this. This, again, ain't really a championship contending asset, but if the Bulls can work out a deal with Portland to either loosen the protections on that pick that Portland owes them that won't convey possibly until 2028, or they get Portland to trade the 23rd pick in this upcoming draft for that pick that they owe the Bulls. I mean, it's something. Maybe it's a little something extra you can throw in a trade with DeMar. Maybe you get something else back. I don't know, man. But it's they gonna have to really thread a needle to figure something out to make this roster spin.
That is a very long way away, bro. I'm over here like LeBron the third gonna be in the draft.
No, right. That's what I'm saying. No, but that's what I'm saying. That could be motivation for Portland to make the deal, though, because as long as that pick does not convey to the Bulls, that's a pick that Portland can't use in a trade to make Damian Lillard happy, because they can't put it in a trade to bolster their roster. Mm-hmm. Right now, Portland has New York's 23rd pick in this upcoming draft. So if they make that swap, it could work out well. It can at least be something for both parties to hang their hat on for this summer, at least, or this offseason. But again, who knows what it would yield, man? Who knows what it would yield?
The Bulls got a better chance of drafting Bronny and hoping LeBron leaves LA to come to Chicago for Bronny. That's how bad it is.
Man, I want LeBron. I want an old LeBron James in a Bulls uniform, like I want Derrick Rose in a Bulls uniform. Like I don't want that for bro. Like, nah, man, you go somewhere else, man.
He might as well face it. He ghosted Mike.
Hey guys, let's get some final thoughts in before we go ahead and wrap it up. Let's go around the horn. Your final thoughts on the season as we move towards the draft and another summer of big decisions for the Bulls, man. Drew, go ahead, kick us off.
Other than what we said this whole pod, man, I'm gonna just leave it with the illustrious words of our man Gino, man. Just huff, man. Just huff. And not even in terms of them trying to exceed our expectations, just not bringing it night in and night out. That was the most disappointing thing.
Charmin and Angel Soft are for sale. Dance Club got a whole 24-pack. Just putting it out there.
I'm more disappointed in the fan base. T, we've been in all of these Bulls Facebook groups for years. I try to just share the content, dip. I don't really want to have debates and conversations. Read the shit. If you don't, cool. If you do, great. I appreciate it, but I don't want to debate because most of y'all are meatheads. But I'm really disgusted at the fan base more than anything because they continue to support this trash. And as long as there are 23,000 fans in the United Center 41 times out of the year from November to April, there's a reason why the Michael Jordan statue is now inside the atrium and not outside anymore. So I'll leave it at that. Jerry Reinsdorf, mediocrity is the best spot for him as an owner. He owns 50% of the United Center. And him and Rocky Wirtz, they living good, man. They check their pocketbooks every night, check their bank accounts. And Jerry can sit on those 6 rings, and he can sit on that 2005 championship from the White Sox until his time is up.
I'll just piggyback on your point about the fan base. That's the number one thing I was thinking listening to AK in the post game or the postseason press conference. It's like the reason why he's able to get up and say that he believes in the direction of this team, even though we all saw them be a 10th place team, lose in the play-in, not make the playoffs, is because he knows the fan base will eat it up. So my message to the fan base is to hold these guys accountable. Do not accept the mediocrity that they are willing to serve up, because like you guys just said, they know the stands will be filled. They know that the debates on sports radio in the city will be hot, when it's really only one thing to say about this team. They have failed in every sense of the mission. They're not a playoff team, and they came into this season stepping away from the championship talk, wanting us to accept that this was the ceiling was the playoffs. They didn't reach that, so what's next? What's next should be to start over. Any good architect of an organization, a team, if you're serious about delivering a championship caliber team, you cannot trot this roster back out. You can't even try to spin as far as the narrative. You cannot spin the narrative to make this fan base believe that they had anything, when we all just saw that this team has nothing to deliver, okay? That is not a knock on the players. That is a knock on everybody that is tasked with building this team into a championship roster. It's not that in any stretch of the imagination. Burn it down. Rip it down. And fans have to be loud and hold them accountable, and, again, not accept that mediocrity, because they're ready to serve the fan base with that mediocrity. That's all I have to say. I'm looking forward to a dope summer of coverage from our guys, Drew and Josh. I'm sure that the Bulls will give us a lot to talk about. The draft is around the corner. The combine will be in front of all of those situations. And when the season turns and comes back around next October, hopefully we have some good things to talk about and a good season to cover. But if that's not the case, at least you got the dopest sports media outlet in the land holding you down. So thank you to everybody that's tuned in and rocked with us for the last 82 Bulls games. Shout out to my guys, my team, Gino, Josh, Drew, Herb, John, Brandon, Jada, everybody that's involved. I got P.I. Make sure you guys are locked into our baseball coverage on the north side with Gene. I'm on the south side with the White Sox, and that's a whole nother discussion for
Jerry Reinsdorf problem.
Right. But
It seems like we found a problem. We found it. We located it.
Right, the common denominator. Oh, man. But, yeah, hopefully the White Sox end the season pod is a little bit different. Hopefully we get to talk about some playoff matchups, but, it's not looking that way right now. Until then, man, we're going to go ahead, get up out of here. You have officially just rocked with the Bigs. Until next time, it's us.